listeners, welcome to the Women in Sports Therapy podcast from the Sports Therapy Association. We are your hosts.
I'm Fiona.
And I'm Debs.
We're so excited to share this month's episode in which we meet with Becky Carroll from Rebecca Stone's Sports Therapy to talk about work-life balance.
Becky is a graduate sports therapist and STA Regional Rep for the Southwest of England. She has been working in the industry since graduating in 2007 and has worked in a number of clinics in various settings and Rugby Football Union over the years.
We can't wait to share our discussion with Becky in this episode, which includes conversations about Becky's approach to balancing clinic work alongside other aspects of her busy life.
Yes, we are in awe of Becky's grace and ability to balance all her roles and responsibilities, which include parent, carer, business owner, veteran military wife, and of course therapist. The list seems endless.
Becky has had to deal with so much, and we were lapping up our ideas about keeping a balanced schedule, setting boundaries, and ensuring that support networks are fully utilised to keep pushing forwards through life's biggest obstacles.
We really love this catch up with Becky. There are so many great ideas and inspiration to be gleaned in this episode.
So without further ado, here is our chat with Becky Carroll. Please enjoy. Welcome everyone to this WIST podcast episode recording. And
hello.
We are joined, obviously I'm Fiona and this is Debs, and we're joined by Becky Carroll.
Hello.
Hi Becky.
Hi Becky, welcome. We are really excited to have you on the podcast and talk about your kind of history and work experience in the sector, working as a graduate sports therapist. With that in mind, would you be able to just introduce yourself to us and the audience and let us know a little bit about you?
Yes, so I'm Becky Carroll. I'm a graduate sports therapist. I have my own business, one-man band, if you like. So I have my own sports injury clinic, which I've been running since 2007. So yeah, proud to say that it's survived a recession and a global pandemic, still going strong, which is good.
Yes.
Yeah, thankfully. But yeah, I treat a wide variety of people, general public all the way to elite athletes. So I never get bored, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's good to have a mixture of people in the clinic. I think you learn more from different types of people, don't you, than just the same.
Always learning, yeah.
And some of your background was to do with another clinic, so you did a couple, and then also the RFU stuff as well, right?
Yeah, so in fact, when I was thinking about my work, I did a timeline and I was looking at jotting it all down in chronological order, and I just got really tired just looking at it all because, you know, there's been so many changes really. So back in 2007, after I graduated, I was working for Gloucester Rugby Club Premiership, so that was really exciting. I opened my own business based in a gym in Breedon's Hardwick near Tewkesbury. And then I think it was 2010 that I started a clinic at another gym in Winchcombe. So at that time, I was also working for an amateur rugby club up in Birmingham. So I was basically doing 4 things at once. But yeah, if we skip forward to when the pandemic hit, it all changed for me because I was running 2 clinics that were based inside 2 gyms. And because of the ventilation thing, I couldn't carry on there. So where I am now is I've got my own purpose-built building, which I operate out of, which is good, over the way from the one gym that I worked since 2007.
Fantastic. Going through the pandemic, I think, has changed so many therapists' way of dealing with things, looking at staff, our ways of working, etc. But I mean, you're doing all of that, and then the pandemic kind of switched things up, and you've adapted, which is incredible. You're also one of our regional reps for the STA as well. Not only that, on a personal level, you look after your mum. You're a mum of 2, you're a wife, you do walking, running, dancing, and you, I mean, wow, you're amazing. So tell us a little bit about your personal life.
My personal life, well, as I was saying to you before we started recording, really, it was quite a shock to me when I thought about myself. I just started listing nouns. You know, I am, as you say, I'm a mum. I'm a daughter, a carer, because that's another thing was that when COVID hit, because I care for my mum, I had to apply to my GP surgery as a carer to get the vaccinations. And it never really sunk in that I was a carer. I just viewed myself as being a daughter. But yes, I'm a mum, I'm a wife, I'm a Navy veteran wife, I'm a carer, I'm a daughter, I'm a friend. And yeah, but so I suppose to kind of focus on me a little bit, I love dancing and getting lost in a book or a movie, going out for a run, or spending time with my family, really, going out in the countryside.
Really important to you. And I asked about your ballet and books and movies, and you really into the historical Philippa Gregory stuff.
Yes.
And also you like that, and also with your dancing, you were doing ballet most of your life up until uni, which is incredible. So you've had a load of stuff happening to you, and then you're still kind of on this massive journey, which is just incredible. And it's just such an honor to have you here today. So so I think a little bit, sorry,
I was just going to say, I reckon that we've got quite a lot to learn from you, Becky.
A little thing about some of the stuff that you do, walking and running. Have you done anything in your personal life with regards to walks or runs, so charity events or marathons or anything like that? Is that something you go into?
Not really. I do it mainly for me. My mum wanted to do Race for Life. I forget when this was now. I think I was at uni. Okay. And but she wanted to get involved, and so I was, that's fine, not a problem. And she, at that time, she was in a manual wheelchair, and the closest one at the time was in Evesham, which is not too far from where I live. And so I took her along. Didn't realise that 3/4 of the track was actually on grass and uphill.
Oh, whoa!
With a manual wheelchair, that's hard.
Gosh. And Mum's in a wheelchair for what reason?
She has a condition called hereditary spastic paraplegia, which is similar to MS, but it's quite rare. So many people haven't heard of it.
No, how is it different? Because like you say, it's not something that many people have heard of. Is it? So MS is something that's neurological. Is this similar in that respect? Yeah,
that is a neurological degenerative condition. So my mum in her teens was normal, whatever that is, in inverted commas, and she just started to notice that her ability to run was slowing, and she was walking slower, progressed into a wheelchair. So she's wheelchair bound now. Okay. But it's starting to affect her ability to swallow. So she's having to be fed through a what they call a rig, like a feeding peg through the stomach.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah. Big life changes. It's a big thing to have to deal with.
Yeah.
And then oh, sorry.
So sorry. Yeah. I'm just saying Becky walks that as well. It's part of her, her children and, grandma and that,
Yeah. I think in terms of you talked about a lot of things have happened over your timeline of your career and your life, and you sort of reached the kind of point of putting it on paper and seeing how many things have kind of stages of life you've gone through or stages of work you've gone through. Did you really notice as you were going through those kind of changes, like this change in your mum's condition or mum's ability to feed herself and getting that change in provision? Do they feel like they're changes at the time, or do you talked about it being kind of like a bit of a blur, I suppose, or hard to separate?
I think it's like anything really. When you're in the moment, you just got to get on, haven't you? Take each day as it comes and each challenge that comes. But when you do reflect back, it can become quite overwhelming because there's a lot to take on board, really. But with my mum's condition being so rare, and even the doctors don't, you go in, and so there have been periods over the recent years, especially during COVID, when mum was hospitalised, and we actually nearly lost her at one point. And the doctors that were dealing with her care at the time weren't familiar with HSP. So, and at that time, you couldn't go into hospital with your loved one, but because my mum was unresponsive at that time, she couldn't communicate.
Yeah.
It's almost like locked in syndrome kind of level at that point. I went to speak for her, and it was quite shocking that I was having to explain over and over and over again what my mum's situation was. So
that's frustrating.
It is, but I try and take all these moments and try and use it to, in a positive way, and think, well, when clients coming in to see me at work, it's like me, I'm rubbish with cars. Like if I go to take my car to a garage and they're saying, the flugel binder injection squints is burst, I might have no idea what you're talking about. And I just try and think, well, I want them to understand a bit better. And if I can put it in a way that they can understand and make sure that it's really crystal clear, then that's, what I take from it, really.
Yeah, that's a really positive outlook. I think it leads us on to one of the questions. There have been a lot of instances within your life and work that we've already started to uncover. And with your work and personal goals, have any of them been quite conflicting? And if that is the case, how have you tried to overcome this?
Yeah. So, I have 2 children. So Ruben, he's 7, and Megan is 5. And obviously, deciding to want to start a family is quite a massive personal goal. And when I was pregnant with Ruben, I finished working 2 weeks before he was born. And I actually went back to work 3 months after he was born. So leading up to the point where I had him, I was thinking, this is going to be the end of my business. Who's going to want to hang around? I don't know when I'm going to come back to work. All these what ifs get thrown up. If you have to have a C-section, or there's something wrong with baby, or goodness knows what might happen. And so I had the plan that one of my friends would come down and maybe do 2 days a week in clinic, keep it going. But I spoke to a few of my longer term clients who weren't really interested. They just wanted to see, that sounded big headed, they wanted to be seeing me.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah. And, I just, what I did was I made a list of people that wanted to be contacted when I was ready to come back to work, which is what I did. And thankfully I had a business to come back to. But I mean, at that time as well, with Ruben, my husband was in the Navy, and he was overseas. He went overseas the last trimester of my pregnancy. He got flown back a week before Ruben was born, and then 2 weeks after Ruben was born, he got flown back out again. So he was away for Ruben's first 3 months.
Wow, so you were pretty much a single mum on your own doing it, with a mum that needed your help permanently as well.
Yeah.
Very inspirational, and highly conflicting in your personal and work life, and yet you managed it. That's really commendable.
Yeah, like one of those things that you said earlier, you do just get on with it when you have to, don't you? And you're responsible for someone else's or other people's well-being, and then you look back on what that burden, or what that kind of, I say burden, but what that responsibility actually looks like in a bit more perspective, I suppose. In hindsight, it's impressive really how we adapt as humans, and in particular as empathetic. I think especially empathetic if you're a therapist, you're probably somebody that is naturally geared towards caring for other people. So maybe there are possibly anecdotal just to say this, but maybe there's a tendency for this to be quite a common situation. So maybe quite a few of our listeners could be relating to some of these experiences. Yeah,
I think I always wanted to fix my mum. And and I know you shouldn't, in our industry we're not really fixing people or anything, but you're helping to ease, aren't you?
Supporting on a journey as well, aren't you? You're kind of guiding people in the right way to support them on their own life journey, and if they come across an injury or disability, the instant reaction, like you're saying, is you want to fix, and we can only support that, really. So how did you feel that you wanted to fix your mum?
I think when I was really young, I didn't quite understand the magnitude of the situation. I just wanted to be able to help her walk again. But through growing up, I'd have people ask me, how do you cope with a mum that's in a wheelchair? And you think, well, I haven't got a mum that's not in a wheelchair.
That's I know.
That's true.
Yeah. Like I say, you just get on with it, in that moment. And I think actually, if you were to say, if you were to turn around and say to my 8-year-old self, you know, at this stage in your life, you're going to have to deal with having a newborn baby, being a carer, a husband being away, I think, no, thank you, run for the hills, wouldn't you? But it is amazing what we, you know, we can achieve, you know.
When the balls are thrown at you.
Exactly, yeah.
You just go, I'm juggling.
Yeah. And smashing places I go, but it's still going, you know.
Yeah, and I think what you actually said, Becky, was you called on a few friends that would help support you, and that's a great sort of reach out, isn't it? If you're really struggling, or you are planning to struggle, there's a possibility that, you know, you need support, and you can't always be the one that's supporting everybody else. You also need support. So I think that you did the right thing. You reached out and said, okay, these people are happy to see someone else. These are the people that aren't happy to see me. Only me, sorry. And you went, right, that's that planned. So I think you've categorized really well, and you're like, right, need to sort out my son. And then when my husband comes back, we'll sort that out. So you're just taking bite-sized chunks of everything one step at a time, really. I think
otherwise I'll just like catastrophize and overthink and, you know, panic, and that's just not useful or helpful at all.
No, indeed.
Yeah, sometimes planning ahead is really helpful, and I mean, you can't always be in that fortunate position where you've got everything you need within arm's reach. One of the questions that we really wanted to ask was if there's any particular examples of where you might have used boundary setting to kind of protect yourself, in effect, from, you know, obviously we like supporting people when they ask for help, but do you ever, you know, put a hand out and just kind of say, sorry, I can't, or maybe restrict activities in certain areas of your life to protect others?
Yeah, I'm a stickler for a paper diary, and I get, you know, people take the mick out of me for not being online with it and digital, but
for those who can't see on if you're not watching on YouTube or on a Spotify video, Debs has her arms in the air and is
waving like she don't care. This is just amazing.
Virtual high five from Becky there.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
That's what I love for the paper
Please
diary.
Carry on, Becky.
Yeah. I just I make a point of, you know, blocking time out, and I actually pencil in not just, you know, appointments, but I pencil in when I'm doing my finances, when I'm going to be spending time with my mum, when I'm doing this, when I'm doing that. So I've got it all planned. I love a schedule. Yeah.
All the ducks in the row, all of them.
Yeah,
it's much easier to look at a diary and say, sorry, you know, it's already been booked off. When you don't have that in front of you, it's very easy to just say yes to stuff. I'm sure I can manage. And you know,
I'd say the other thing I do, which you might laugh at, and I don't think people realise that I actually mean this when I say it, but I will stand in front of a mirror and I will just practice saying no, sorry, but no.
That is so strong.
Well, and I love from Friends, Phoebe's line of, I really wish I could, but I don't want to. That's just my best line, isn't it? It's just
so much inspiration is drawn from Phoebe Buffay from Friends. If you're not a fan of watching Friends, the TV sitcom, you really need to. There's some great life stories.
20 minutes escapism, isn't it? Of just like giggles and smiles, and, you know, as they say, laughter is the best medicine.
Absolutely.
I think as you get older, like I remember that was very popular when I was kind of in school. I was still in school when it was on, and you know, I don't think I had the same appreciation. I don't think I had the same appreciation for maybe some of those underlying plots and, you know, things that are happening. And as you get older, I guess I see, you know, the penny drops. Get what that's about.
The messages that are coming through. So that, I mean, that's great about the boundaries. I think it's very difficult to have a boundary for somebody to actually cross. But sometimes when we're in clinic, those boundaries get squidged by people because they go, oh, can I just, I've got this as well and this as well. So how do you come across that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I'm a sucker for the head tilt. You know, if you get the puppy dog eyes and the head tilt, then I just have to, I've got like a split second to go one way or the other. And I can be a nightmare for kind of, you know, all the advice I've just given out of the water, out the window. I'm squeezing people into lunch breaks, but you just got to stay true to your convictions, haven't you? And there's a reason why my diary is as it is, because if I take any more than I've got written down available for, then it's just, I'm at that point where I could be overloading myself, and if I'm no good to anybody else, and that's a problem.
That's great,
especially if you're, I mean, it sounds, Becky, like you're somebody that's quite, you've built your business up and you're at a point where you have issues with actually squeezing people into the schedule that you've assigned to that work. For members or people in the audience who are listening to the podcast, who perhaps are maybe at an earlier point in their career and their calendar isn't looking so full. I mean, I know from when I was starting my clinic up, how I literally just left the calendar open, and it would be pretty much every day is open for business, or only certain days, but maybe all day. Have you ever had that issue where you're trying to drum up business, but you haven't, I don't know, like if you've got nothing else booked into the schedule? It sounds like your life has been quite, jam-packed with loads of responsibilities and things to do. Is there any way that we can adapt that information or kind of advice for somebody that perhaps doesn't have a packed calendar?
Yeah, when I first started out, obviously, my calendar wasn't full from the off. And I remember at a point where I was fitting in, I think maybe about a week or 2 weeks, this is when I got particularly busy, so I'm kind of sorry if I'm going backwards and forwards, but I remember a time where I had 10 clients a day for a short amount of time, like 2 weeks, and I thought, no, I can't do this. This is too much. And I think actually, you have to find where your limits are. Yeah. And you have to go through a period of time where you are pushing yourself too hard to realize that you're pushing yourself too hard. But when I first started out, I back then I was based in a gym, so I had my worktop that said, I'm a sports therapist on the back and my name on the front, and smiley, 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 and just walk through the gym. And, if anybody makes eye contact, just have a chat. And I had these really, really rubbish posters, that I did on PowerPoint or whatever it was, the Microsoft, is it PowerPoint? No, not PowerPoint.
Yeah, PowerPoint you can, make a poster.
It was published.
Oh, yeah.
Really rubbish adverts around, but the point is, it had all the relevant information, and so I was getting people starting to call, and then, my local town, I just walk around the town with my worktop on, and occasionally you get stopped by somebody. But even if not, people are then recognising you and putting a face to a name. Yeah. I didn't have a website then. I don't think I had my business Facebook page either, so making me feel old. But anyway, it's just a case of just being confident to know that you've got to put your toe in the water, and it will come, really.
So the cheesy catchphrase is "build it and they will come."
Exactly. Yes.
Very wise.
Yeah.
But it does actually work that way. When you look back and when you start and you think, oh my God, I'm doing like 1 or 2 people and I'm still studying, and there's all this kind of stuff, and then all of a sudden you have an influx and referrals and you think, oh my God. And it does happen to everyone. It's not it's not just the really long in the tooth people like myself. It does happen, and it's quite nice to hear your experience as well, Becky. Thank you.
Yeah, and you do have drier spells. Even like I said, I've been in business since 2007, and I do have drier spells where I might have, I don't know, half a day, and you think, oh my goodness, where's this come from? And I think, wow, I can actually go gym.
I can breathe.
Yeah. And then you start panicking. You're thinking, oh, this is the beginning of the end. And what am I going to do? And then the following week, your phone doesn't stop ringing, and you think, if you'd have rang last week, I could fit you in.
And why is it like 5 clients on exactly the same time and day? Why is that?
They're only available when you're not.
Yeah.
Very
Can you do 7 in the morning? Well. So thank you for that. So the boundaries are quite difficult sometimes to put in place, but we had a podcast a little while back, and we were saying about work-life balance, and it's so important for those boundaries to be secure, but it's us that set them. and then trying to make sure that somebody else isn't like pushing them. So Becky, I think you've got a handle on it, and it's great advice. Thank you.
Well, the other thing is it's more from chance and luck than anything else. But when I started my business, I wasn't married, and my business name is Rebecca Stone Sports Therapist.
Yeah.
So in terms of social media, I've got my business profile page and my personal profile page, and obviously Becky Carroll, and I don't merge the two. It's very rare that I do. So my clients that will be following my business page won't know my married name.
Okay.
That's another boundary that I quite like, is that I don't interconnect the two.
So you've got a personal life as well.
Yeah, I try my best to try and subcategorize, if that's the right word, those two elements.
Yeah, that makes sense. Totally does.
So does that work, if you don't mind me asking, like, does that mean that we know Becky Carroll through the STA? For that reason, you're keeping your kind of like communications under your married name, kind of I don't know how that, like, as a regional representative, is kept separate from your representation as an individual working in a therapy setting.
Yeah.
Is that how it's split out? You said your personal page, so I just wasn't sure.
So this is from a client point of view. So I don't really like the idea of any clients knowing too much about my personal life, or be able to see it, shall I say. I'm constantly talking about my husband and my kids and everything. So in fact, I think my clients know more about my husband than he does. But there's being open and talking about things, and then there's somebody being able to tap into photos and.
Right.
You know what I mean? But yeah, in terms of the STA, it's just from my lack of ability to kind of cope with technology that I'm Becky Carroll via the STA than Rebecca Stone.
That's very fair.
Going on to another question, the question actually is, to avoid paralysis by analysis, do you use any strategies to reduce decision fatigue? Now, your family are incredibly important to you, like you've just said, your husband and children you talk about a lot.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a factor within the decision-making process. So how do you avoid going, well, I need to take, Ruben here, and is your husband still away in the Navy? Does that happen?
No, he was medically discharged, which is another spanner that was thrown into the works.
Okay.
No, so he's retrained to be an electrician. So he did an intense theoretical course back in tail end of 2019. And was about to start doing practical when COVID hit. So about a year or two where even now actually he's on a very low wage, because he's trying to wade through mud really with the practical side of things. So I've completely forgotten the question you asked me. But...
That's okay. So it's about decision fatigue. So there's a lot of decisions that you're having to continuously make. So how do you avoid this situation? There
was one moment in time, I was thinking about this earlier, but I was attempting to make some sandwiches. It shouldn't be a difficult task, but it was, because I had so much in my head that I couldn't process properly. I couldn't figure out what I was meant to be doing with the knife and the butter and the bread. It was just, and I just had a bit of a breakdown, and emotional. I couldn't figure out how to do it. And Dan was like, look, you've been a bit sketchy the past few days, what the hell is going on? And I was just saying to him that I'm so overwhelmed, I was struggling. So he was like, right, sit down, get this A4 bit of paper in front of me, make a list of everything that's going on inside your head, and which I did. And he was just sat opposite me and just gasped as I turned the A4 paper over and kept on going, and a lot of it was silly things like take the library book back to the library, just put
soap in the dispenser.
But some of it was pretty major. Like my mum was, at that time my mum was really quite poorly, and we were trying to get her out of hospital, and the care package had been cancelled, all these things. So, but actually by listing it, I could then colour code, because I'm a bit of a nerd, and I colour code things in terms of priorities, and thought, this stuff doesn't need to be in my brain at the moment, we'll just shelve that. And this stuff I need to deal with relatively soon. So then the massive list became a list of only 4 or 5 things. So I'm an advocate for listing, and I love scratching it off.
Yes,
and
it's
again, I like,
therapeutic.
yeah, I like paper and pen, so scratch it off.
That is awesome. I'm with you, Becky. I can see Deb's nodding away there. List making, or just a brain dump, like getting whatever's in the head onto paper, is the best way to just start. Like, it's, you know, very simple. But it's funny because as a, you know, topic of conversation, I feel like I've had quite a few conversations with particularly other women in the last week or two about this, and just it is interesting that there's similarities between all of the people that I've had these conversations with, and that the amount of stuff that we're all seeming to be processing at one time seems to be so much more than what I perceive, at least my own partner, who has his own stresses, like to be dealing with. Like, there's moments of like peace and quiet I feel for him, whereas I just can't switch my brain off. Sometimes I'm just constantly reading through like decisions I have to make, and it feels like it really does where it stops you from being productive ultimately, because you kind of, like you say, you can't make a sandwich if you don't know where all the bits are going to go. Or
now, I was having this conversation with someone the other day, and I really don't want this to come across as sexist, so just, you know, disclaimer, but we were saying that, well, she was saying to me that being a mum, being female, we have a lot more tasks that need to be done, I suppose, the best way of putting it, than what a perceived father or male. I'm really sorry, but stuff like, you know, Christmas cards, writing Christmas cards, that's generally the wife's role and that kind of thing. But this became like really paramount to me recently when so my daughter had been poorly at school. Now, the contact form they do at school, you know, the first person that's meant to be contacted in the event of your child being sick, we put down as Dan, my husband, because, you know, in his position at work at the moment, he can down tool and go straight there.
He's more accessible, isn't he?
Yeah. I can't, you know, if my phone is on silent when I'm at work, so I'll only check it during appointments.
Me too, yeah.
But so my daughter was poorly and my husband hadn't been contacted, but I had. And so when I rang the school, they were saying, well, you know, we thought we'd better ring mum. I was like, well, what was the point in the whole contact form? But then you wonder, you know, it's a position in society, isn't it, that mum is
the go-to person. The one that the kids will want.
But there's still so much education needed.
Yeah, for my personal circumstances, they should have rung my husband first.
That's what the form's for. Agreed.
Like I say, I really don't mean it to come across sexist at all, but, you know, it just seems like, you know, we're talking about pigeonholes, that seems to be one of those pigeonholes for being, you know, female, being mum, being wife.
It's really hard. And I know that this is like not just an issue in terms of like sexism. There are other areas of, you know, differences between people where it affects people. But I think that the problem is when it's so sort of subliminal, like such like microscopic levels of differentiation between genders, that it's almost not worth it. Like, if you were to just say, like, bring it up every time, you would just never have any time to do anything because there's so many instances of it. You know, the default mode is that it's assumed that something will just get done. And I think, you know, especially if you're particularly, like, it may be again more of a therapist kind of, or empathetic kind of person, maybe not just female, but somebody who's more empathetic or concerned with the well-being of, say, the people in the house, intuitively might end up picking up bits and pieces and cleaning up and tidying away. And like you say, it's not to be sexist, but that does seem to generally have historically been women. And the amount of mental fatigue, like, just from, you know, never really being able to stop and just like forget all of it, it has a massive implication for ability to progress in career. You know, if your brain is just full of other useless kind of like decision making, you know, the bigger decisions, the longer term things can be really hard to like reel in, and especially self-care.
I take two things that really has helped me in that respect was a book called The Chimp Paradox by Steve Peters.
Yeah.
I found, well, actually I listened to the audiobook, and there were quite a few points in that book that really resonated with me, that made things, and I can quite easily take on emotion, like other people's emotions. I can't, I'm a nightmare for that. I can overthink things. And actually one of the takeaway points I had from his book was that you know, there's nothing I can do to change your behavior, but what I do have control over is my reaction to your behavior.
That's right.
You know, and so I that book, if you haven't read it, whoever's listening, and you know, you're struggling to kind of understand how to cope with stresses, then that's a really good go-to.
That's great advice. Thank you.
Okay. And then the other thing that really helped me was I did the mental health first aid course during lockdown with James Chapman.
Okay.
And he explains about the stress container, and that was really useful for me as well. So the idea being that you have this container, and I quite like to think of it as either like a shot glass or a pint glass or a pitcher, you know. And the idea being that the smaller the container, the more vulnerable you are to stress at that time. So some days I'm definitely a shot glass, and other days I'm a pitcher, and you can throw everything at me and I can control it. But each of these containers has a valve, and if you're pouring in the stress into the container and the valve's open, then it's, you know, you're dealing with that stress quite well. But if the valve is closed, or there's more stress than the container can cope with and it overspills, you know, you're in trouble. And I really sat down and started to look at what my stresses were. And the tricky part for me was trying to figure out what became under the category of the valve. Like, what do I do to de-stress and kind of, you know, unburden myself? But once I started to kind of figure out those two areas, so take time for yourself really, and just try and work through what aggravates you and what helps to take the pressure off.
It's so difficult, isn't it, to just kind of pinpoint what that valve could be when you're really in the thick of it, and like that container is brimming, you know, full with stresses. You mentioned, I mean, your partner or your husband has kind of been instrumental in one instance, one example that you gave, in getting you to just focus and get all that information down that's in your head. Are there any other kind of people who you've found, or things that you've learned from other people, or advice that people have given you, to identify? What did you do when you were trying to identify that valve? Like, how did you make that first kind of, what did you do after you made that first realization, and what was the action you took? Yeah,
so I mean, it varies from you know, depending on what's going on, but I generally take to the hills and go for a walk at the hill, or go for I never call it a run, I go for a trot. Yeah, my husband is he's my soulmate. He's a rock, and he can be very irritating at times, because I'll kind of, like what you were saying about like dumping on him all this emotional stuff, and he tries to fix it. I don't want him to fix it. I just want him to go, that sounds pretty rubbish, you know, come and have a cuddle. But I don't want him to fix it. But he's very good at just being there, you know.
It sounds like you've got incredible support to help with some of the decision fatigue.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Sorry, Fiona. I'd just like to go back to what you said about the colour coding. And you said I'm a nerd. Actually, I think that's an incredible way of dealing with something, to look at something visually and go, oh, that's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, is such a valve release. And I think that's one of the tools that they teach you in DBT, CBT, if anyone's done anything like that, is to release by looking at something. So we've got to find out what our learning styles are, how we cope with things. And the fact that you've recognized that, and then say, actually, what would really help me is if I looked at something, it's easier than trying to untangle it. That's something I can't see in my brain. And what a great tool, what a great use of a tool. I just wanted to pick up because I think it was a little bit lost in the whole discussion, and I actually just wanted to bring that back as a little highlight.
I don't know
so
if
I could see it. And I think it was a really good way of use.
I think I'm losing Debs.
Yeah,
are you okay?
Yeah.
It's not just me. I think we'll come back to that question.
Yes, I think the crucial part.
Sorry. Yeah.
Well, we've got you back.
I'm back on. Yeah.
Audio's there.
Sorry.
It's all right. You just turned into a robot for a moment, but you're back. Maybe you can ask if you ask
Android Debs came in.
If you ask the question again.
So I wanted to highlight the fact that the colours were just such a visual aspect of a valve release, and it's very tangled in the brain sometimes and we can't see it. And as a physical therapist, for me, I like to be able to see things, and often we're dealing with the body, we can't see inside the body. But if we feel, so we're utilising lots and lots of different skill sets, I think, to try and take some of the stress away from ourselves. So, I mean, the original question was about decision fatigue. There and then you had all on paper, and there were your decisions made for you. You just went, that colour, right, that's that colour's that. It was much easier to sort it. And I just wanted to sort of re-highlight in yellow to bring that back out. Because I think it was a little bit lost in where we were going, and I just thought it was such a good technique. I wanted to kind of re-highlight that.
Yeah, it's always been my way of learning, is by making something bright and colourful, a story, or like I say, visually making it very apparent so I can see. And I kind of use that in clinic as well, and I try and make sure that the person I'm working with, I understand how they best learn, whether it's visually or audibly, or they like to understand the mechanics of things, so that it helps with their plan, if you like, and they're moving forward.
Their recovery journey or their life journey or whatever. Yeah.
But no, I'm definitely bright, colourful. It does help me to put things into categories and think, actually, I don't need to deal with that now. I can worry about that later. Doesn't need.
Which is. And how many of us in our clinics have diagrams on the wall, knees and spine bits, and that are like, we can show, this is what's happening with your spine, or this is what's happening with your muscle, and this is what this muscle does, and things like that. So I think for us then to cope with everything in our head is way too much, so that's a really good technique. And like I said, I just wanted to sort of bring it back out for a highlight.
I think that we mentioned making lists and just getting things out of your head. I mean, I'm, like Deb says, I quite like using my computer. I am actually definitely a pen to paper type of person innately, but I've learned to use various bits and pieces of software. And in our planning for this particular podcast, we use Trello, which is like a free app, essentially, and software that you can use through a browser, just to create lists and create almost like a flow of work through a process. And we can borrow things from other industries. This is something that's used in technology, but I think we are quite insular in our therapy community sometimes. We look to each other for solutions, and you've mentioned a book that was written, and it's quite, I actually think that somebody did share that in the STA group. I'm sure I've seen it posted in there a few years ago, and I also downloaded the audio, but I don't think I've actually finished it. I read the first bit, or listened to the first bit, and I was like, okay, I get it. And then I was just like, I can't, okay, not I'm a bit of a collector of audiobooks that never get finished. But trying to actually look outside of our sphere of work and borrow ideas from other industries or other people. I do love podcasts. I think we can learn a lot from, sometimes just having conversations with people who aren't directly involved with our work or personal life. It's just so helpful. And I want to ask a question now that has sort of been sitting in our list, about how in terms of, you know, when you're talking about that, like sort of all the stuff in your head, or like little instances of sort of, I guess we're talking about sexism. Are there any ways that you've noticed or that you think are useful for approaching times when maybe our listeners need to either advocate for themselves or for other people? So as a carer, you've advocated for your mother. It sounds like you've had to do that quite a bit. And your children, obviously, as a parent, a partner, a husband who has had illness or medical discharge from work. So do you have any advice for people who are having to advocate for others or even themselves?
I think, I mean, empathy is the big thing, isn't it? And that's more of a trait really than something that you can learn. But it's just, yeah, trying to put yourself in other people's position. And if it were me that was going through what that person is going through, how would I want to be treated and how would I want to be helped? And try to be, what's the phrase? When you're listening to what someone's saying, but you're not trying to think ahead. I can't think of the phrase.
Projecting.
Yeah, and active listening, I suppose. Yeah. Yeah,
it does help to have a sense of perspective and like embody almost like what the other person is experiencing in some way to express on their behalf something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with the cafe wall illusion.
No.
It's so it's a series of parallel lines which are evenly spaced, but these lines are then filled in with black and white blocks, but they're kind of the pattern is all skew-if. So when you actually look at it, it doesn't look parallel. It all looks what's the word, off center and all over the place, but it is actually just parallel lines with these blocks. And the point being, it's about your perspective, isn't it? Because I'm looking at it thinking, well, I know that it's all parallel lines and it's these black and white blocks, but somebody who didn't know that would look at it and be like, whoa, it's all over the place. And I've got a good friend of mine, and when my husband was in the Navy, and he'd be away for 7 months at a time and then home for 6 and then away again, and she'd be like, how can you cope with him being away more than he's home? And that's just my situation, and we just got on with it and dealt with it, and that was fine. But my friend, who couldn't fathom the idea of coping with that, she lives and works with her husband. I was like, I couldn't cope with that.
That's so
my
true.
perspective of her life is that it's all quirky, whereas her perspective of my life is it's all quirky.
That's so true. Yeah, everybody each to their own, and so one I guess in many respects, what questions we're asking you, trying to pick your brains for advice, one size fits all doesn't always work, so do what suits you. yeah,
find what works and run with it.
And that does lead us to the last and perhaps the best question in our list, unless there's anything else from Debs.
No, after this question, I just kind of want to ask Becky one more thing about where she's going next, because wow.
Yeah.
So after this question,
is Becky going next?
Write it down. Anyway, but the question, please, Fiona.
Yeah. So this question is our kind of like intriguing kind of big question, which is, do you agree or disagree? Is it true or false that, quote unquote, women can have it all? Women can have it all?
I think women can have it all, yes, but I think in a moment in time, because the goalposts of life are always changing, aren't they? You think of this work-life balance, and the fulcrum's always changing, in my opinion. The goals are always changing, so at some point you can be happy. And if to take away from what Leslie Campbell was saying about if having it all is being happy, then I'm happy, I'm content at this moment in time. I'd like it if my husband was able to work a bit more to bring in a bit of extra dough, but that'll come as he finishes his training. But that's my point, is that life, the goals, are constantly changing.
Agreed.
But, can you have it all? That's very much independent, isn't it? Subjective.
What is all?
Yeah.
And what is all today might not be all tomorrow.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's such an individual thing. We're all aiming for different things, aren't we? And we're all wonderful and different in our own ways. So we can't all assume everybody has to get, like the same goals. And
I'm also thinking one of the things that might be a good idea is to go back to the school and say, I'm just going to have a quick look at your form about who to contact in an emergency. Although I am a heterosexual woman, if I was of the same sex relationship, which one would have been mum? Just to kind of put that out there. and I would be going, the form's a little antiquated. It probably could be addressing or putting onto a computer where it's easily accessible. ICE, it doesn't matter who it is. That's your ICE. That's your in case of emergency person, whoever they might be. It doesn't matter whether it's mum, dad, or Aunt June down the road. That's the person that's accessible at that time to care for that minor child, I think. So I just wanted to raise that really serious point.
I'll go and do that in September.
I don't doubt that for 1 minute, Becky. It's color coded red. Let's go.
It is.
Emergency danger. Go. I find you incredibly intriguing. I think you're a really strong woman. You do so much and have so much on your plate, and yet you have really good ways of dealing with it. You are focused. You may not feel like all of these things, but you are focused and you are in control of what you're doing, and you are just winning at life, and you have stuff thrown at you, and yet you're still saying, yep, well, I do this, yep, well, I do this. And that is such a lovely way of walking through the life that you're leading at the moment. What is next?
Well, thank you. I think
it was a compliment.
Next, well, I'm really happy with where I am at the moment in terms of my clinic and who I'm working with. I know when I was younger, I did constantly compare myself to other therapists, and locally and further afield, and they're working with a professional sports team and I'm not at the moment, and that's me failing. But you know what, who cares? I'm happy with where I am. I'm bringing in enough money to keep the roof over my head and keep my kids happy, and so yeah, I'm content. But when my husband has completed his training and he's able to work properly, we've discussed that the roles will change in terms of I would like to look more into like the psychology of pain, like working with people in chronic pain and helping them to understand, and tooling them up really with the ability to move forward. It's something that I see a lot in clinic, that people are emotionally, everyone's emotionally attached to their pain, aren't they? And I feel at the moment ill-equipped to cope with, or to deal with and help them with that side of things. And that is something that I would really like to get trained up in. So
that's great. Okay, that's a
nice,
really good
is that
goal.
So is that a bit of an expansion on that neuroscience bookie thinking, kind of going down that route?
A
bit of further study. Amazing. So cool. It's such a big area, and it is a multidisciplinary field, sports therapy. We do think of it as like being very physiological, especially massage, those kinds of modalities, but there's so much going on, and individuals trying to work with people, we're so complex. So a bit of
just going back to an earlier podcast regarding endometriosis, and a lot of women that have endometriosis, which I've discussed in another podcast if you want to know more about that. We were told that it's psychosomatic. There's nothing wrong with you, it's psychosomatic, it's all in your hair, it's all in your head. But what you're saying here is actually some of the pain is in your head. You can control some of the pain, although there's a physiological transmission that happens as well, and you can see that there's like movement and it's not moving, that's hurting, but there's a lot of psychology that can actually help to train our brains to then not feel the pain. Breathing exercises, techniques and stuff. I think it's a fascinating subject, and I wish you the very best of luck with that for sure.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and actually talking about what you're doing and where you're at and where you're going. If we need to find you, Becky, you talked about website and Facebook pages. Can you tell our listeners how we can find you if we need to?
It's probably best on Facebook, really. I'm a bit of a technological dinosaur. I do have an Instagram account, but I don't really use it that much. Naughty me. But yeah, it's Rebecca Stone, sports therapist on Facebook.
And your website?
Lovely.
Oh yes, my website. GLOS sportstherapy.co.uk.
Thank you.
Super duper. And is there an email or a link to sending you a message through that website?
Yes. It's Becky, BECKY at GLOS-sportstherapy.co.uk, I think.
Amazing.
Oh, you've asked me now, I've forgotten. That's not good, is it?
Yeah, the danger of giving out the wrong email address. They'll soon know.
And I haven't got any of my business cards in my phone, so I can't even check.
Well, if you can't reach Becky, you can always reach us if you need to find her. But as a regional representative for the STA in the Southwest, I'm sure that you'll see Becky on the STA Facebook pages frequently. If you're already a member, Becky and the fantastic contributions that she makes to the group. You're so active in there, Becky. I can't actually keep track of sometimes like the conversations in there, but I often see your name on my notifications bell.
Yeah, I might be that annoying person that constantly pops up.
Not at all.
No.
I think it's better to be active in a group and contributing, and like the things that you put in there, they do make me think they're very thought-provoking, and you ask great questions. Like I think one of the best the Facebook page is one of the best ways to get information, and asking a question like putting in a clinical case and asking people for ideas, referrals to resources. That's the best way to get the information. So I think it's the way forward. I think it's the way that everybody should operate.
Yeah, if I can, I will.
Yeah. So I think we've probably expired we've certainly asked all our questions, and we've asked you what we wanted to. So I think we'll wrap up this episode here. So thank you very much, Becky Carroll, for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you're very welcome, and maybe we'll see you on here again soon. We could talk probably on many issues, I'm sure, with your breadth of experience. So if you guys listening have enjoyed today's episode, and perhaps you want to access more resources like Becky, services that Becky and the rest of the team offer across as a regional representative, or any information about, say, discounts or services offered by the STA, you can head on over to the STA website, which is literally thesta.co.uk. If you want to find out more about the Facebook page, just put the STA or Sports Therapy Association into Facebook, and you'll find the group there, the open group. And if you would like to listen more to the STA podcast or WIST podcast, we're available across podcasting platforms such as Spotify and Apple, so you should be able to find us fairly easily, and all links are available. Oh yes, we're on YouTube. Yep. Okay, yeah. So if you want to watch the video and you're not watching on the video right now, we have a playlist on the STA YouTube pages, WIST playlist, so you should be able to watch. I think we're now on series 2, so by the time this goes out we should have at least two handfuls worth of, or a handful and a half of episodes for you to play back while you wait for the next one. And if you would enjoy what you listen to and what you're watching, please do click the subscribe button and sign up for notifications so you can learn or see when the next episodes are released. So I think the only thing to say is, if you need to reach us, like Debs and I, we do have an email address, which is wist@thesta.co.uk, so WIST@thesta.co.uk. And you can find us on Twitter and Instagram. Gosh, this is a long ramble. On Instagram and on Twitter, our handle is @UK_WIST. And I think that's everything that I needed to say. Take a breath. So that's all from us for this episode. Hopefully we'll catch you in the next one.
Once
Take
again,
care.
thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.